Well, hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Southern Oregon Housing Podcast. I'm Alice Lima. I'm a principal broker at Home and Land Real Estate. And this week, we're going to talk about foreclosures, the story you're not hearing on the news. So I don't know if you've been catching some of the sound bites here and there that foreclosures are up. And so I thought I'd talk about this because when I start hearing that here and there, I want to dive in and see what's really going on and how it's going to affect Southern Oregon. So here's a couple of charts from one of my favorite websites, KCM, Keeping Current Matters. And this first one shows that foreclosures are remaining well below crash levels. Now, this is really interesting, and the data comes from ATTOM, another one of my favorite websites. And you can see between 20 2007 and 2012, we had a lot of foreclosures. Now, these are national numbers, and we'll dive into the local ones next. And then you see this real low dip 2020, 2021. So the 2020, 2021 was the moratorium, the federal moratorium on foreclosures. So there was a huge dip. But even now, as we've come out of the pandemic, our foreclosure numbers nationally, they might be double what they were during the pandemic, but because of the moratorium, they really weren't having foreclosures. But we're really not even back to what I would call a normal foreclosure market. And I have used foreclosures as a source of inventory myself as an investor. I've made offers at the county courthouse steps. So I'm not just talking about this from a data perspective, I'm talking about this from an investor perspective, from personal experience. So I'm not in a big panic mode as a broker or as an investor or as a property owner. And I'm not worried about the economy in that respect. I do have other concerns about our economy, but that's a different podcast. And we're just specifically focusing on foreclosures. So the next chart I want to show you is even more interesting. And this also gave me more reassurance. Not all foreclosure filings become an actual foreclosure. I thought this was an interesting chart to compose. And again, it's from Keeping Current Matters, and the source was ATTOM. And you can see during the financial crisis, the Great Crash, that there had a lot of filings. That's the yellow line. They had foreclosures starting. That's the orange line. And the completed foreclosures were higher than normal. But if you follow the red line through to current times, you see that dip again in 2020, 2021, but you don't see the actual foreclosures happening at any great rate. So we do have a lot more foreclosure filings than we did compared to 2020, 2021. We do have foreclosures starting. There's a specific linear process, especially in Oregon. There's certain linear steps that happen in order. And so that orange line is tracking the start of the foreclosure, but it doesn't really end up completing, in part because folks have enough equity, they can sell their property and get out from under the foreclosure and start over again, if you will. So let's talk about Southern Oregon in particular. So during the Great Crash, the Great Housing Crisis, we saw a lot of unemployment, and that led to people putting their houses on the market. Prices were dropping really fast. The other element that was working underneath all this in Southern Oregon, and I remember this well, because I became a licensed agent in 2009. So folks that I was dealing with as an agent, that were just selling their house because it was not worth what they paid for it, basically. And so that kind of fueled the fire and it helped prices go down and it got some momentum. In fact, I also remember that during the great crash, appraisers were starting to only go back 3 months instead of 6. Now, if you get a mortgage now, a lot of times appraisers will do a whole 6-month backtrack to figure out what your value was. The prices were falling so fast during the crash, they were doing 90-day. They're only going back 90 days. So that was the environment we were working in. High unemployment, prices dropping fast. 1 in 274 houses were in foreclosure. And we had something like 2,000 houses on the market, where the normal is 900. And so fast forward to 2026, if you follow my market statistics podcast, you would know our inventory is up, but it's not any great shakes. In fact, this week, the market statistics podcast that's coming out reports Jackson County has 883 active listings. Josephine County has 438, and Klamath has only 350. So we're not anywhere near having problems of that kind in our housing market. We have other problems in our local housing market, but it's not foreclosures coming at any great rates. Okay. So that's what the news is not saying. I just wanted to weigh in on that. It really bothers me when they try to get people worked up in the wrong direction. I'm all for getting worked up in the right direction, but the foreclosure, that's not a thing right now. So I do want you to give me a call, give me a text, and we want to talk about what we're going to do with your real estate life. My number is 541-301-7980. That's 541-301-7980. We have a lot of educational videos, a lot of helpful information. We also track the landlord-tenant market in Southern Oregon and locally with Home Nest Property Management. So yeah, so give me a jingle, give me a text. Let's do a consultation and figure out if you're going to buy, if you're going to sell, if you're going to invest. Yeah, let's just talk about what you're going to do. In the meantime, have a beautiful Southern Oregon week, and we'll see you next time. Bye, folks.